Hi Year 11, I'm very excited to, well done first of all for choosing to follow the taster session for art. Very good choice. Lots of things you can do with an A-level in art, as well as obviously, fingers crossed, if you enjoy art you'll find it really an enjoyable A-level as well. I've got the UL logo there and the AQA logo, so I ought to just draw your attention to those. First of all, it is the AQA Fine Art course that you will be following, so you can do a little bit of research there. Fine art sounds a bit daunting, mainly because it's got the word fine in it, but really we choose fine art because it is the most open course. It allows you to do pretty much artistically whatever you want, so it's very nice and open. UL, so obviously you've experienced the changeover from UL, so you might have some perceptions about what it means to attend a UL school, but I think the critical thing to know about UL schools is that the aim is always for excellence. So if you're an aspirational student, if you want to do well in the future and you want to have lots of options open to you and lots of job possibilities, then UL schools are working very, very hard to make sure that every single student has the same opportunities and that you all get to do what you want to do. So that isn't just about making you work hard, it's about making your teachers work hard. So we have a running program of CPD, we're constantly being trained. The training that we do is informed by research, so you can be absolutely sure that the teaching that you're receiving is the very best based on research. I'm really proud to work in a UL school. UL, United Learning, are the largest academy in the country, and they are on the advisory board for the government, so they have quite a great deal of influence, which works well for us. You should also know that Avonbourne has a historic really good track record of provision for arts. So although we are embracing new strategies for making sure we're the very best teachers we can be, we actually already did have a really good reputation, and our results put us in the top 5% of art departments in the country. A-level results are even stronger than GCSE results, with most students achieving at least one whole grade higher than their target grade, often 2 or 3 grades higher. So if you're an aspirational student and you're keen to go places and you want to have lots of career choices, then well done, you have made a good choice choosing United Learning Sixth Form. Okay, moving on to the next slide then. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of an idea about the coursework, the course structure. So it's a 50% coursework, 50% exam course. The coursework is completed over the first year and a half, so all of year 12 and up to the end of January year 13. The coursework is in the form of sketchbooks, larger pieces, and an essay, which sounds daunting, but it really isn't. So it's just one essay, and that kind of helps us to understand your ideas and your work. And 3,000 words, by the way, if it's typed, is about 6 sides. So really nothing too onerous there. And then the exam, I mean, basically if you've enjoyed the GCSE course, you will enjoy the A-level course because it's really quite similar. The exam is again 50% of the final grade. As I said, it's issued to you in February of year 13, and it follows a very similar format to the GCSE, which you've all got lots of experience of because you've had lots of practice. So you get given a word, a question which is a word, and then you interpret that in a personal and meaningful way. The actual exam time is 15 hours. Again, that sounds like loads. You had 10 hours in year 11, actually 15 hours for A-level. If anything, I think it could quite easily be longer. But it follows the same sort of format, so it's a practical exam in an art classroom. Okay, next slide please. I'm on the corner of this. Okay, so you are expected to produce practical and critical contextual work. So there is written work in the form of analysis, self-evaluation, evaluations and annotation, but you're all very used to doing that, you're all experts at that, and obviously we're here to support you with that as well. And then these are just some of the things that I've pulled out of the AQA specification. So painting, drawing, mixed media, sculpture, land art, installation, printmaking, film, animation, television, video, photography, lens-based and or light book-based media. So it's a huge range of different mediums that you can work in. If you don't know any of those words, by the way, I'm not going to spend ages going through each of those. Some of them obviously you know very well, like painting and drawing. Maybe you don't know what installation is. If you looked at Tracy Emin, you might. My advice to you would be to just Google it. Just do a bit of research and find out. But the nice thing about the course is it's flexible enough to allow you to do lots of the things you do enjoy and not so much of the things that you don't enjoy. But we encourage you to have a variety like you did for GCSE. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what should you have in your portfolio? So your portfolio is the thing that you'll take with you to interviews at university. That may seem like a long way off, but 2 years, which is what your A-levels are, fly by. And you might have felt that with GCSEs as well, so it's the same length of time. So it's not a bad thing to start thinking now about what your route is. We work very closely with AUB, as you probably already know. They come and do their interviews. They've said that they really like our students. AUB, you may not know. You should really, because I'm sure we've told you this before, but it's an aspirational university, so that means that it's one with quite high entry requirements and has a really good reputation, not just in this area but internationally. So if you go to the campus, you'll find lots of students speaking all sorts of different languages because they're coming from all over the world to study at a really prestigious university. So you're actually very lucky to have that on your doorstep, whether or not you choose to go there. It's great that they have an influence on the department at Avonbourne, and if you follow the link there, that will give you an idea of what you are expected to have in your portfolio. But basically, during the 2 years of the A-level course, you'll be putting together a portfolio that you will then take to interviews at university, whether that's AUB or elsewhere. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we've got, I mean, you're familiar hopefully with the exhibitions. You should have been taken around the exhibition. That is what you produce at the end of the 2 years. So one of those spaces is allocated to every student. You'll have a combination of 3D work, sketchbook work, any other materials you've got, and then obviously the work that is mounted on the boards. And that is what the moderator will come around and have a look at as well. So it's worth you being aware of that. Okay, next slide please. Okay, so the mark scheme, I'm not going to go, certainly not going to read all of that for you. But if you did have a closer look, you may recognise some of the sentences, some of the things in there, because it is so remarkably similar to the GCSE mark scheme. The lovely thing about the AQA course and actually art as a subject is that it's really quite open. So as long as you're showing that you're developing ideas and that you are informed by contextual sources, showing you've got a critical understanding, as long as you've explored and selected different material and refined your skills, as long as you've recorded your ideas in photography and drawing and reflected on them through annotation and presented your personal response, which is your final outcome, which makes connections between visual elements and is meaningful and personal. That's it. I've just basically, in a very, very long sentence there, described the 4 marking areas. As long as you're doing all of that, then you are going to be meeting the AQA marking criteria. So that's excellent. Okay, next slide please. Right, okay, so this is your activity. I'm going to do a written activity and a practical activity. So we're looking at Rembrandt. The reason I've chosen Rembrandt is because your first unit in Year 12 is called Clutter and Identity. So looking at your clutter, but also thinking about yours or other people's identity. And Rembrandt was probably one of the most prolific self-portrait painters and artists. So they're a really big part of his body of work. Hopefully you've heard the name Rembrandt. He was alive and producing artwork a very long time ago. He was born in very early 1600s, and he created about 100 drawings and 40 paintings of himself. That might look like bordering on obsession, but I guess in one way you could consider him the original selfie artist. So why do we take a selfie? Well, you know, maybe you're wanting to promote yourself a little bit. Maybe you use selfies a bit like a mirror, or maybe you take a step back and you're quite objective about yourself, I certainly think that for Rembrandt, his motivation for drawing and painting himself a lot wasn't because he was hugely vain. If you look at that picture, he doesn't look like a particularly vain man, particularly obsessed by his appearance. He was using it as a sort of a way of educating himself and learning about anatomy and expressions and accuracy, ready for when he painted the rich and famous people who gave him commissions. Okay, that's a little bit of background about him. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'd like you to listen to the worked example. So I've got a picture there. The writing's really tiny, so I think you probably will need to listen. So I've written this. This is a portrait of the artist Rembrandt, and it's entitled Self-Portrait with Beret Wide-Eyed. It was drawn, because it's a pencil drawing, in 1630, which means that the artist was 24 years old when he drew it. It was fairly early on in his artistic career, and my first impression is to think that it's quite a funny expression. And as an artist, because I draw as well, I'm thinking about the practicalities of him pulling this face in the mirror whilst he was drawing it. Imagine holding that expression for a long time. And that's an insight into his ability, because I think he would have had to have drawn it fairly quickly. So, clever guy, he's completed that drawing potentially really quite rapidly. And there's something about the way that he's used line and pencil that suggests it was quite quick as well. He's captured the expression very effectively. Wide-eyed is an expression often used to suggest innocence. Wide-eyed and innocent, I don't know if you've heard that. Perhaps because we're more easily shocked when we're young. Maybe it's because you haven't got the creases and crinkles around your eyes that stop them being quite so wide. Light and shadow are quite extreme, suggesting he was clearly lit in the picture, which would have been difficult in the 1600s. There's no light bulbs, no electricity, so it would have been presumably daytime in a fairly well lit room, and windows were quite small as well at that time. So the furrowed brow under his wild curly hair give a suggestion of anxiety and fear. I think that this was a drawing exercise. Perhaps he was practicing different expressions, perhaps he was preparing for a painting. So he might have been, for example, people would ask painters, commission painters, to recreate religious scenes, or they might have asked him to recreate a scene from a war, you know, so-and-so being victorious in a war, and he may have had to have tried to draw a frightened face. This was a really good way of practicing that. At this point in history, as I just said, there were no cameras or Google images, so if you wanted to see what happens to the face and features when showing different emotions, drawing was the only way to capture this. And a mirror and drawing were really the only way to look at your face. So mirrors were much less common. Glass was, you know, quite a luxury item. So many people would have barely seen themselves at all, and potentially would have only been able to see what they look like from looking at a reflective surface like water. Okay, so that's just giving you a little bit of context, a little bit of an idea about why he painted it, what I think, and trying to have a guess at what he thought as well. Okay, so next slide please. Okay, so this is the painting that I would like you to write your own analysis of. So you can see there that I'm talking about context. A really good way to get an idea of the meaning is to look at the title of the picture. So the title of this painting is Self-Portrait as the Apostle Paul. So this is a self-portrait of Rembrandt, but he is acting the part of the Apostle Paul. So it becomes a painting of an apostle. It's not supposed to be ultimately a painting of the artist, but it is a self-portrait. At that time, actually in history, art collectors were quite keen to see paintings and pictures of the artists as well. Think about talking about things like atmosphere. You know, what about that dark atmosphere? What does darkness convey in a painting? You might want to think about things like, you know, things hiding in the dark, lurking in the dark, mystery, but also maybe something sinister. You might want to think about the expression on his face. He's definitely older, isn't he, than the picture that I chose, or the first picture that we looked at. so you can work out what age he was in 1661. Think about the expression on his face. See that expression on anyone? He certainly doesn't look particularly self-satisfied. You can look at his clothing, think about the title, and try and establish what it says or shows about the artist, and talk about your own reaction as well. Just to help you out a little bit, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so when we talk about context, St. Paul was a disciple of Jesus. So the painting is the Apostle Paul. He is St. Paul. He was a disciple of Jesus, not one of the original 12 disciples. Religious themes come up a lot in early art, by the way. It's nothing. We're not going to be doing lots and lots of religion, but it is relevant for this one. He was originally Jewish, so he converted to Christianity, and he was blinded by a light, mysterious, but he claimed that his eyesight was restored by Jesus. This helped him to become a missionary, a very zealous missionary. A missionary is somebody who is on a mission to spread the word of God and Jesus. And he went on to become the first pope. So he is the original Paul. And pope literally translates as papa in Latin, meaning father. So if you look at that painting, that might give you some other thoughts. It would be lovely to hear your response. It would be lovely if you could submit what your thoughts are about this painting. I suggest you pause this slideshow now and have a go at writing your paragraph of analysis, and then rejoin me afterwards. Good luck. Okay, so I would like you now to have a go at your own self-portrait. So you can either set up a mirror in front of yourself or print a photo of yourself and work from that. Don't forget the basic measurements, which you did learn way back, I think it was year 8 or year 9, so probably the first and most challenging thing is drawing your face shape. You might want to put in some markers here to help you out with that, so maybe put one either side of the head for the width, one bottom and top for the length of the face. What other advice could I give you for face shapes? You keep it fairly wide open, rounded shape at the top, and then try and bring it in a little bit narrower at the chin. Okay, and then remember your basic measurements. So your eyes should be halfway down your face. Your nose should be halfway between the eye line and the chin line. There's the chin, nose halfway between, and your mouth halfway between those two. So just put a little mark there. That's where the lips meet, by the way. Okay, once you've done that, you should be able to fit about 4 eye widths into your face. So, and your eye width should be about 1/4 of your face. So if you measure 1/4 of your face, so let's say that's the whole face, that's half, and then half again, so about there. That should be about how big your eyes are. So one that side, one in the middle, and one the other side. So you should have that 1/4 between the 2 eyes. You can put in points first of all, and then just a curved line at the top and bottom. Nose, I would just remind you sort of the C and the D, almost like brackets. And then the nostrils and kind of a ditch in the middle. It just depends on the size of your nose, how upward tilting it is, how big that is. And then your lips, obviously 2 points for the width of it, so it depends on the size of your mouth. Mouth sizes are quite variable. And then lips above and below that point there. Okay, and when you've got the basic features drawn out, you can then just rub out your guidelines. Got a bit of a rubber on the end of this pencil. And what I'd like you to do is to use attempt to use pencil in the same way that Rembrandt did. So he used a lot of, let me see this okay, he used a lot of directional lines, and he used cross-hatching a lot. So rather than putting rather than smudging and creating these really smooth tones, he was just using lines much more. So just experiment with line. You might want to have a little practice on the side or the back of your piece of paper when you're doing this before you go straight on. Might have been a good idea for me to have a little practice, but anyway, I'll plod on. You can improve on the work that I'm doing. Okay, so this will be one of your summer challenge activities as well, because obviously it's going to take you longer than just this 40-minute session. But the great thing is that because of the project that you're going to be doing, this can be used as part of your coursework. So please do take your time. We have had people who have done this before, you know, choosing to submit this as part of their A-level in year 13 because they were really proud of it. So a self-portrait is a really nice thing to have in your exhibition, actually. Okay, I mean, notice because it's fairly heavy on the tone. Notice the fact that I'm leaving some areas completely white. I'm not covering the whole entire drawing in cross-hatching. Do remember when it comes to tone, the really important kind of rules about tone, which are that the lightest areas of your drawing should be the bits that stick out. So on a portrait, that is your nose, your brow bone up here. These should be the really light areas. So the tip of your nose would be the lightest area, wouldn't it? And cheekbones. And your chin sticks out, and actually your lips stick out. So often people make lips darker, but in fact, if you're thinking about tone, and this is a pencil drawing, which is a way of measuring or capturing light and shadow, you should be kind of, as far as possible, trying to ignore the colours and just thinking about the tone. So ignoring the fact that your lips are generally darker than your flesh tone, and actually just looking at the fact that they stick out. We've got a little bit of a shadow here. A little bit of shadow coming in along the side of your face. You'll have to see how you get on with this. I would recommend you try and use, if possible, it depends what you've got at home, but I would recommend you try and use a slightly softer pencil rather than just your HB. Okay. Conscious that this could end up being a really, really long video. But I will put a picture of what I've created at the end. Maybe you could share your self-portraits with me. That would be a really nice thing to see. A bit of practical work coming our way over the course of the summer holidays. Obviously you need to find some time. It depends how you found lockdown. You didn't need to make sure you find some time for yourself. Don't get overly bogged down with it, but I'm just trying to capture those contours of the... And I've got a fair few crinkles around here as well, which, like Rembrandt's, which you potentially won't have. Okay, I'm going to stop here because otherwise this is going to become a really huge file. and I want to save it as a video so that you can work from that as well. But you can see how I'm approaching this. This is how I'd like you to approach it. I'd love to see that you have taken something from the artist's work, but also, you know, you don't have to exactly copy it, so copy his style. So if you have a technique or a slightly different approach to Rembrandt that you want to pursue, that's great. And in fact, you know, I would really like you to do something. So if you prefer not to use this style and just to work in your own way, that's fine as well. Okay, good luck with it, and I look forward to seeing what you get up to. Thank you. Okay, I just thought I'd show you the drawing as it's drawn to conclusion, as I get on to finishing it. So just adding the shadow in for the hair and under the chin. And obviously don't forget that when you look at Rembrandt's drawings, they obviously often kind of tail off, so I'm not drawing in, you know, shoulders, too much of the shoulder detail, tone on the top, etc. I'm going to leave it at that. So that is my very hastily completed self-portrait. See if you can improve on that one. I'm sure you can. Okay, thanks, good luck.